A single sleeper cabin on a European night train can cost more per mile than a business-class plane seat, and the operator running that train is still losing money on it. That's the paradox at the center of one of the strangest businesses in transportation. Sleeper trains charge premium prices, run mostly full, and almost everywhere in the world, they still bleed cash. In December 2016, Germany's national railway, Deutsche Bahn, shut down every single overnight sleeper and couchette service it operated. Not one route, all of them. The trains had carried 1.3 million passengers that year and lost the company 32 million euros on 90 million euros of revenue. That's a loss of roughly 35 cents on every euro of ticket sales. Here's the mechanism, and it's the one idea that explains almost everything in this video. A sleeper train is a hotel that can only rent out its rooms once a night, on a route that only makes sense once a day, using a vehicle that's too specialized to do anything else during daylight hours. An airplane flies the same route 4 or 5 times a day. A sleeper train does it once, and then the equipment often sits idle or has to travel empty until the next evening. That's not a scheduling quirk. That's the entire business model. Airlines make money the same way a taxi driver does, by keeping the vehicle moving and full as often as possible. A Boeing 737 might fly 6 legs in a single day, generating 6 separate paydays from one airframe. A sleeper train can't do that. Industry analysts describe the rule of thumb bluntly. A night train only really works if it can depart after the last flight leaves and arrive before the first flight of the morning. That's roughly one useful trip, once every 24 hours, from a vehicle that costs millions of euros and requires a dedicated crew. And that vehicle isn't cheap to build in the first place. Compartments need beds instead of seats, which means far fewer paying passengers per car than a normal carriage. Austria's rail operator, ÖBB, is spending over 500 million euros to renew its nightjet sleeper fleet for 24 trains. That's roughly 20 million euros per train, for equipment that will spend half its life running one route, once a day, in the dark. So if the math is this brutal, why did Germany's DB kill its sleepers, while Austria's ÖBB bought hundreds of millions of euros in new ones, from the exact same manufacturer at almost the exact same time? This is where the story stops being about trains and starts being about who's willing to eat the loss. When Deutsche Bahn pulled the plug in 2016, it wasn't just chasing a bad balance sheet. Budget airlines like Ryanair were undercutting its long-distance fares. Germany had deregulated intercity buses in 2013, opening a cheap new competitor. And DB's own strategy shifted hard toward its high-speed ICE network, where trains run all day, every day, maximum utilization, minimum idle time. The sleeper network got the opposite treatment. Restaurant cars were stripped from journeys over 12 hours. Service quality was quietly run down. Predictably, revenue per passenger fell even as DB chased volume. A spiral where a shrinking, aging product loses to buses and planes on price, and loses to high-speed rail on time. Deutsche Bahn didn't kill night trains because Germans stopped wanting to travel overnight. It killed them because, inside a corporation that could redirect that capital into assets running 16 hours a day, a niche product running 8 hours a night couldn't win the argument for investment. Even where sleeper trains survive, they're carrying costs that never show up on the departure board. Crossing international borders in Western Europe, industry estimates put the cost of running a single overnight cross-border journey at up to 10,000 euros a night. Customs, multiple national track access regimes, and staffing that has to be paid premium overnight rates. Because, unlike a daytime conductor, a sleeper attendant is essentially working a night shift for a living. Track access itself is a strange inversion. Nighttime slots are often cheaper because there's less competing traffic, but that saving gets eaten by everything else. Cleaning and turning around a train with actual beds in it takes longer than turning around a train with seats. And maintenance windows on high-speed lines are frequently scheduled at night, specifically because that's when the tracks are quiet, forcing sleeper services to work around engineering crews instead of passengers. Every one of these costs exists specifically because the train runs while everyone is trying to sleep, on tracks other people are trying to fix. So far, this looks like a simple story. Night trains lose money, full stop. By the way, if you are enjoying this video, make sure to subscribe because we have a lot more coming. But that's not actually what the numbers say. And the real answer flips the entire premise of this video. Look closely at Amtrak's long-distance network in the United States, and something strange shows up. Sleeper passengers make up only around 15% of long-distance riders, but they generate almost as much total ticket revenue as coach passengers, who outnumber them roughly 5 to 1. Per mile, a sleeper berth is one of the highest yielding products Amtrak sells. On some long-distance routes, sleeper and business class revenue is effectively subsidizing the coach seats sitting in the same train. And yet those same trains, as a whole, are catastrophic money losers. In 2023, Amtrak's long-distance routes lost about $150 per passenger on average. The Sunset Limited, running Los Angeles to New Orleans, lost the federal government around $578 for every single passenger who boarded. Here's the reveal. The sleeper cabins aren't the problem. The train is. A single long-distance train still needs a full locomotive, a full crew, full fuel costs, and full track access fees, whether it's carrying 40 people or 400. And long-distance routes in the US run at a fraction of capacity once a day, over distances a plane covers in a few hours. The premium sleeper fares are propping up a fixed cost structure that was built for a much bigger, much more frequent railway than the one that actually exists today. The paradox isn't that sleeper trains overcharge and still lose money. It's that sleeper trains are often the only profitable part of a system that's fundamentally too infrequent to break even, which raises an uncomfortable question. If sleepers make the most money per passenger, why isn't everyone building more of them? The answer is playing out right now, in real time, in Austria. ÖBB is the operator every night train advocate points to. When Deutsche Bahn abandoned its routes in 2016, Austria's ÖBB absorbed much of the network and built it into Nightjet, Europe's largest overnight rail brand, expanding to Paris, Brussels, and Amsterdam. It looked like proof that sleeper trains could work at scale. But in 2025, ÖBB quietly cut its order for new generation Nightjet trains from 33 down to 24, redirecting that freed up money into its daytime railjet network instead. The company's own head of long-distance services has since called night trains a niche product and stated plainly, "We are not a growth machine." Dining cars have been scrapped to squeeze in more berths. Every single carriage, he says, has to individually justify its own existence. Even the operator that proved sleeper trains could work is now betting more heavily on trains that run all day than on the ones that only run at night. The utilization math wins again, even inside the best-case scenario. So why do governments keep funding them anyway? Scotland's Caledonian Sleeper has lost tens of millions of pounds under multiple operators and was eventually nationalized in 2023 after its private operator, Serco, lost roughly £77 million running it. The UK government still subsidizes every journey by well over £100 per passenger. France, Austria, and the Netherlands have gone further, banning short-haul flights on routes where a reasonable train alternative exists, deliberately tilting the economics in the railway's favor, because the emissions math, unlike the balance sheet, actually favors the train by a wide margin. Sleeper trains survive not because they pencil out, but because someone, a government, a taxpayer, a climate policy, has decided the thing they buy isn't just a night's journey. It's an alternative to a mode of transport whose true costs, environmental and otherwise, aren't priced in either. Strip away the velvet curtains and the vintage romance, and a sleeper train is really just an extreme case of a much more common problem. Any asset that's only useful during a narrow window of the day is fighting the same math, whether it's a train, a ferry, a concert hall, or a hospital wing that only fills up on weekends. The businesses that win are the ones that figure out how to keep the asset working around the clock. The ones that don't survive only as long as someone else is willing to pay for the idle hours. So the real question isn't whether sleeper trains are a good idea. It's whether we're willing to keep paying for the hours a train spends doing nothing, because that's what a ticket for a good night's sleep on the rails has always actually been buying.